Hello everyone, I am Minidroit, and the great English poet Samuel Taylor Coleridge once wrote, "Water, water, everywhere, but nor any drop to drink." I'm pretty sure you've all played the original Flood Escape. It was popular in the early 2010s and often appeared in Roblox's bland seasonal events. Whether you loved or loathed the game, I can't tell you that. Personally, I remember playing it in 2016 on my old account, but I never considered one of my favorite games. Granted, I didn't play multiplayer that much because I always wanted to practice before jumping in, which I never did. Also, I remember playing with elementary school friends, so that's nice. Essentially, I thought the original Flood Escape was a fine game, though I didn't have many fond memories with it. However, in 2017, a sequel was released. Up until now, I've never played Flood Escape 2. Hell, I didn't even know there was a sequel. I wasn't in tune with Flood Escape news. Today, I'm gonna check out Flood Escape 2, because I want to see if Crazy Blocks can capture that passion after Roblox 3D platforms as a child. Also, I want to see how a decade of game design experience has influenced the Flood Escape series. Now, before I get into the game, I have to say the script was written on July 8th, 2023. I have to date this video because the game gets updated every week. What? That's insane. And that policy makes anything I say redundant. That kind of sucks. Alright. Enough blabbering. Let's get into the game. The first things I see as a build game are 4 pop-ups, with each acting each other in an unappealing manner. Personally, I prefer having these pop-ups appear sequentially, like on Neon Knights where it's its user interface. All these problems, the Daily Core Award is a pretty good way of encouraging players to return to the game, especially since it increases with each sequential playthrough. Also, I like how the developers looking for new players to redirect them to the easier game mode. Preventing new players from being destroyed by hard difficult maps to make sure they won't have a bad first impression. Aw. You guys need to fix that. I like this lobby, though I don't think it benefits from its attempts at minimalism. I do appreciate how CrazyBlocks manages to integrate gameplay elements into the lobby with its scalable walls and central pool, but I need to talk about a single elevator. I don't like it. In Flood Escape Classic, there were 3 main elevators you could go on, with each elevator letting you choose what the map would be. I like this system. It let you choose which difficulty you're comfortable with and provide a clear line of progression for the players. If you fully got rid of the lower difficulty elevators, you could have just moved on to the next level elevators to challenge yourself. Also, you didn't have to wait for easier maps to appear as elevators operated simultaneously, allowing you to progress at your own pace. I like that Flood Escape Classic provided players with practice holes on the lower floor because I didn't want to feel like I was bringing down my team while practicing. So I think Flood Escape 2 streamlined single elevator is a downgrade. The previous game's triple elevator system was replaced by a server menu. I don't like this new system. Firstly, accessing the game mode menu is generally confusing. Look at the UI. Tell me, where do you think the game mode selection screen resides? The green play button? Wrong. It's in the spectate menu? Why? What new player would click on the spectate button instead of the green play button? Not only is it unclear that a game mode selection screen is hidden in this menu, but the spectate button is the second to last button. The shop and statistic buttons preceded in the user interface. The game mode selection screen's placement is poor and it would fit better in the statistics page. Replace your challenges tab because there's your challenges in the top right corner. In fact, doing so reduced the number of pop-ups that appear at the start of the game. Also, I really don't see why they couldn't keep the previous game's 3 entrance setup. They could have moved the experience leaderboard to the right wall and just gotten rid of the blatant monetization. You already have a button that redirects you to the shop. You don't need to advertise game passes near the entrance. Hell, you're already using the lowest monitor. CrazyBlocks' attempt at streamlining the gameplay experience was a little ill-natured as they're clearly prioritizing monetization and advertising over ease of access for players. You wouldn't want a new player to be thrown to an extremely difficult level, right? Anyway, I joined the easier servers to get a feel for the game. After playing a couple rounds, I said I really appreciate the developers created on animations and moveset for the game. Depending on your keybinds, you can jump, dive, float, or slide to get through the level. While these controls are basic, I appreciate CrazyBlocks' effort to make them smooth and useful. Also, letting players wrap their hotkeys is a big plus for me as players get to choose which keys are most convenient for them, maximizing comfort and usability. I like remappable hotkeys. Their presence tells me that developers are skilled and care about the player's experience as a whole. Also, I'm ambivalent towards the game's emphasis on cooperation. It's pretty unique for a Roblox obby, most of our single-player affairs, but teamwork is a core aspect of Flood Escape 2. Though, this usually translates to being hard carried by other players in the game. Of course, the daily challenges incentivize players to go for buttons. That and, you know, actually want to play the game. But often, 2 more players go for a single button, which reveals an issue with in-game communication. Flood Escape 2 is perfect for small friend groups talking through Discord voice chat. But for those playing in pubs and solely using Roblox text chat, coordination is horrible because, let's be honest, no one can type fast enough to talk to their teammates turning around. CrazyBlocks has disabled voice chat in Flood Escape 2, which is a misstep. Sure, Roblox voice chat has some pretty unstable moderation and it's not as good as Discord due to its spatial nature, but I would still like to have the option in dedicated servers. Voice chat will always be better than texting during intense games, and in a game about coordination, not having voice chat definitely hinders the experience more than my anxiety does. When it comes to the game's maps, they're really aesthetically pleasing. One of Floodscape 2's greatest strengths is its maps, obviously because they're literally the thing you're playing on. Personally, I don't like how the stages is essentially split into two halves due to stages buttons, since I often get confused by the split paths and lose track of where I am in the map. Of course, I don't fault the map designers. They need to add these divides to encourage teamwork. Also, the general confusion that may arise during your first playthrough encourages players to replay maps and practice their runs. This is a decent way of motivating players to play the game more often, as you haven't competed with the previous times, appealing to their drive to improve. Though, I feel like a drag when I'm practicing these routes, which is why the absence of a single player game mode sucks. I don't really see why there isn't a single player game mode, other than the game's emphasis on teamwork, and I think that bringing back the practice mode would be great. It'd let players practice on specific maps without having to wait for them to appear and would reduce the constant feeling of inferiority, which does affect performance because of social inhibition. Would this game be superfluous? Maybe. But I'd still like to have the option. And no, Coach Roblox private servers are not an alternative for free single player rounds. Another dreadful attempt at monetizing the game? Shameful. Each map has an original accompanying track, and the game's OST is fine. Funnily enough, it's over for an opposite problem that Lab Experiment does, where the game's OST is pretty intense for such a lax game. Here, some of the tracks are just too calm. If I'm running for my life, jumping and fleeing from acid, why is the music like this? Of course, this doesn't apply to all of the maps. Some of the maps are pretty pumping and I like those tracks, but I still don't think that some of them fit the game. I mean, for a Roblox game it's good, but it's no adventure OST, am I right? It needs more metal. Also, I just don't like most modern electronic music, so I'm definitely biased against the game's soundtrack. Now that I've covered the gameplay and the general feel of the game, let's talk about the game's monetization. It's abhorrent. $50 for VIP, some cosmetics, and more gems? That's ridiculous. Want to cheat democracy? Only $7.49. Also, the blatant advertising of purchasable in-game currency irks me. Sure, I could just ignore it, but it just accentuates the devs' lust for money. The custom flood colors game pass is ridiculous to me. $4.37 just to change the color of liquids? Pfft, I can do that for free in my editing program. I particularly dislike the item packs. Sure, they're pretty cosmetic and don't give the players an unfair advantage, but $5 minimum just for 2 boomboxes and a trail's larceny in broad daylight. Especially after Roblox's 2018 copyrighted audio purge. What? Are you gonna galvanize your team by blasting Talent Talk by Gerhard and Narholtz? I just don't like it when Roblox devs overly monetize their games. And yes, I am disappointed in the removal of single player for 200 Roblox private servers. It just breeds ill will between the developers and the community when they take away features and send them back to the players. Also, I don't like the cosmetics in this game, but at least they're not directly paid for with Robux. Still, I find them excessive. Auras, water tanks, skins? Why? Who knows your custom water tank? And who would want to play as a different person? I genuinely think that Crazybox ran out of things for players to spend their coins on, so he just added skins to games that richer players would have something to buy. And maybe encourage people to buy coins with Robux. I think I've covered most aspects of Floodscape 2's gameplay. So, that was my prolonged nitpick on Floodscape 2. I think that's, psych? Do you think I forgot the community maps? So, let's talk about them. I sort of consider this game as DLCs to the main game, with all the maps you can load being community made. The game lets you download a map creation kit so you make your own levels in the studio, and I think that's really cool. I always love it when developers encourage the community to create fan content, as that's the essence of Roblox. Roblox gives developers resources to make games, and adoption of this core principle by Crazybox is awesome. Some of these maps get featured in the main game too, and that's really neat. Giving players easy accessible mapping tools was Crazybox's best decision, as the community can create more content faster than Crazybox can as the sole developer. So, let's check out some of the community maps. What? I think we should talk about map accessibility. Some maps just aren't whitelisted. That's a bummer. But besides those maps, which includes many maps for the main game, I like that this game lets you choose what map you'd like to play. And with about 1,058 maps to check out, you won't get bored going through a wiki page and finding maps to play through. This game definitely benefits from Floodscape 2's large mapping community, even more than a base game does. I like the community servers. They also make the main game's private servers irrelevant because this game lets you play maps alone or with your friends. If you have them. So, overall, Floodscape 2 and the community maps are pretty good games. While I do have some grievances with UI design and blatant monetization, its core gameplay, polish, and vast community content easily overshadows my nitpicks. I like that Crazybox is a private community with mapping tools. It lets people collaborate on maps, and people in the Floodscape 2 community can collaborate on stages, which is just amazing. While Floodscape 2 is a good game, some things that may be fixed or revised. I think a game mode mimicking the original Floodscape would be pretty cool. It's definitely my favorite game on Roblox, but it's not a slog to get through and I enjoyed my time with it. This game gets an 8.3 from me. Crazybox definitely improved their programming and design skills up to the original Floodscape, though I do think that some mistakes were made with the sequel. I really don't like unnecessary streamlining, especially if it hampers playability. That's really all I have to say about Fuzzgame Team's accompanying games. Goodbye all.